Jessica.
Hi, I hope everyone is doing well today. Welcome to today's safety update. We'll have updates from Andrea and Gary. So for today, we will deal with the cybersecurity, drivers fatigue management regulations, mostly for Western Australia, the strategic safety planning, and also the new dangerous goods regulations, which will be updated by Andrea. From I would hand it over to Gary now.
Terrific. Thanks and welcome once again, everyone. So today, as Jessica's mentioned, we've got four brief topics. We're still going to keep it within our short, sharp 20 minutes, half hour for you, as usual. But before we do that today, I thought I'd share with you a number of questions that I've received over the last week or so. And I'll leave it with you now, and we'll come back to it at the end and just see if you know the answer. So the question was, can we do our 10-year maintenance service early? So if you've got a crane or a forklift or a vehicle hoist, so there's certain pieces of plant that are required to have a 10-year design major service to continue using them. So the manufacturer specifies a design life of 10 years, and you have to do a major inspection and service to verify that they're safe to continue to use. So somebody said, hey, I'm going to buy a second-hand piece of equipment, but can I do the service early? I'll leave that one with you. Someone else had asked since our last webinar, can we restrict who does machine isolation, which a lot of people call lotto, lock out, tag out. And so do we make workers lock and tag out machinery if they think it's unsafe, or can they put a piece of tape around it and go call maintenance and let them isolate it? Or do you insist that the workers must do this the moment they find it? Someone else said, our service provider for our forklift said we have to pay to install hydraulic locks on our controls so that when the forklift raises a pedestrian cage, it can't move horizontally. And in the Australian standard refers to these hydraulic controls. Do we have to retrospectively fit them to our forklift trucks? And the final question we got, I thought might be of interest. We see a lot of vertical ladders on buildings and around structures. And the question was, do we have to lock access to roof ladders and similar structures? So I'll come back to these at the end of our session today. So let's move on to a very topical session at the moment. It's in the headline news almost every day at the moment, but I just thought I'd share with you. The Australian Institute of Company Directors only this week has published some principles for cyber risk management. And I'm only going to share these at a very high level. If you're interested, go on to AICD's website and just type in cyber risk, and I believe you'll be able to access the excellent document they've published on this. What I like was that there were just 5 key things that you need to consider in your business right now. And you can talk to your exec team and your IT team and say, 1, have we got clear personal responsibilities for IT security? So not only should the company have responsibilities, but every worker in the business should have specific roles and responsibilities, what you do and what you don't do. Secondly, the business needs a comprehensive cyber risk strategy. What is the strategy? High-level activities are going on. AICD suggested you integrate this with your normal risk management process. It may be IT risk, which is different to our manual handling, machine guarding, chemicals and fumes, but it can actually be managed by the same risk management process. And you need to build a culture of resilience. A lot of people think, well, it's not going to happen to us. But if you don't have a culture of thinking it will happen to us, it can happen to us, then you don't build resilience into the business. And what they say is, don't assume you're a low target. You're not a high priority target for hackers or whatever. Plan for a significant cyber incident. And so you've got a plan, you've got resilience, you've got backups, true backups, and you can actually manage and operate. But of course, you've also got to look at security of your files. One of our clients have told us, although it's fairly expensive, 24/7 monitoring of downloads. Hackers download gigabytes, huge amounts of your data. If that's happening, your computer system should recognize that somebody's downloading gigabytes off your data, off your system, as opposed to you and I making individual inquiries and downloading a single file. So there are electronic systems that will monitor that and manage it. So finally, just assume hackers are out there actively trying to get into your email account and into your files. Our IT person recently told me this week that they've detected multiple attempts to get into Gary Rowe's email account, mainly from overseas, and in this case, not from Russia or whatever, but from the US. So people are daily, procedurally trying to get into your accounts. So there's just cybersecurity. We primarily deal with physical workplace health and safety, but this is certainly part of business risk, and we need to be aware of it today. And you've got a role as well within your business.
Gary, I just wanted to share about this cyber risk.
Please.
Last year, I was on a panel for machinery safety at the World Congress that we did online, and I talked about the dangers or fears about robots. And so we traditionally, from the old sci-fi movies, think about, I guess, an evil robot that might choose to harm people. But one of the cyber security experts talks about a much more real fear that actually people could potentially hack into a system's robotics or other sort of robot machinery and actually misuse a company's machinery against people by hacking. So just something to think about.
Yeah, that's a good point, Andrew. We have iPhones managing just about everything remotely these days, and they talk about hacking into people's mobile phones and either turning on or off their home security and other things as well, maybe turning on their cars like Teslas and things like that as well these days. So there we go. So just a little bit on the profile cybersecurity. We need to be mindful of this. It's real and it's out there every day. Driver fatigue. One of our clients and friends raised this issue with me under the new WA safety regulations, Reg 184C. Said, we've got to have a driver fatigue management plan, and we've got to consider scheduling and rostering, fitness for work and driver standards, trained on fatigue issues, and have an incident management system. And all of that's true, except when you look into the detail, it only applies. So now driver fatigue is real. We probably should have a driver fatigue management plan. It makes good sense at a business level if you've got commercial drivers or team driving long distances and long hours. However, these regulations only applies to commercial vehicles, which are essentially greater than 4.5 tonnes, i.e. trucks, where commercial drivers exceed 60 hours per week of driving, or 10 hours per day more than once a week, or driving between midnight and 5 a.m. more than once a week. So the legal requirement for a driver fatigue management plan is greatly restricted. So commercial trucks, commercial drivers doing long hours per day or per week, or particularly at night. So I just thought I'd air that with you. I think driver fatigue is a valid topic, but this regulation requirement is very restricted to those categories. So if somebody raises it with you, it's true, it's real, but it, in this case, legally only applies to those commercial drivers in those commercial vehicles. So let's just look at our most recent topic, and was a main feature of our November safety newsletter, if you read it, on strategic safety planning. So I'm just going to encapsulate some key things, and some which were not included in the article might be of interest to you. I love the statement, a vision without a plan is just a dream. And so a good strategic planning begins with a clear safety vision, which is aspirational and inspirational. And you need both these. And I want you to test and go back after this session and look at your company safety vision and say, gee, is it aspirational but also, is it inspirational? Is this something that's going to inspire my workforce? And I read something just recently, back when, remember, was it President Kennedy, the vision to put man on the moon. So we're going to put a man on the moon within 10 years. And he was at one of the NASA facilities, obviously before his death and before the man was put on the moon. And he asked one of the cleaners in one of the facilities, he says, "What do you do? What's your role in the business?" And I thought it was interesting that the cleaner said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." So it doesn't matter whether you push a broom, if you've got an aspirational and inspirational vision, this is what drives people. That's what drove everyone in NASA at that time to achieve that great goal. Excuse me. What I find is we have a lot of ho-hum safety visions, I think, or we've got this great statement, but at the moment that's all we've got. So remember, a vision without a plan is just a dream. So to have credibility with your workforce and your key stakeholders, we need to have a strategic plan that sits under the safety vision. So that's the essence of this here. So let's look at a couple of components. So the key steps. First, you need to benchmark where you are now. What's your performance and current concerns in the business? What actually is worrying the business, emerging issues? Maybe we've got prevalent manual handling sprains. Maybe we've got emerging psychological hazards and risks, and people are off work for long periods of time. So where are we now? And then importantly, with your in a workshop typically of your key stakeholders, let's say, where do we want to be in the future? That's the exciting vision. This is the bit you need to get. Where do we want to be in the future? And so the sort of questions you should be asking are, what will we look like? What will we be doing? How will people behave? So when something goes wrong, what do people do? Because at the moment, a lot of people when machinery breaks down, they take shortcuts. So what we want to do is have a vision, a safety vision, that actually says, well, if we're unhappy with how people are behaving now, or how we look and how we're performing, what will we look like in 5 to 10 years' time? And typically you say about 10 years. It's not tomorrow, it's not next week. This is a long time out, and it's a long journey to go on to get there. And this is what we talk about as the safety culture journey. It's typically a 10-year journey to truly arrive where you've got a robust, sustainable safety culture that will actually stick in the business, as opposed to, I did something this year, but 2 years from now, it's all evaporated and gone. And so now you know where you are here, you know where you want to be, you've got this big gap in the middle. So what we need, so here's the point, you need about 3 lead strategies and possibly 8 to 10 enabling strategies. In other words, if I've got a major strategy I want to achieve, which might be to eliminate manual handling injuries, that would be a lead strategy if you had a lot of manual handling injuries. You'll probably need a number of other lesser things to happen in the business before that can happen. One of them might be enabling strategy. We've got to automate more of our equipment and machinery to minimize manual handling, movement and strain. So you have a high level lead strategy, and to achieve that, you'll have generally multiple enabling strategies sitting underneath. And as I said, you might have a 10-year vision, that's the safety vision, but most businesses can't plan beyond 3 to 5 years. So when you're talking to people about KPIs and budgeted projects, you'll probably only have a budget for next year. That's okay. Budgeted 1 year out, that's fairly standard. But we've got notional budgeting and KPIs probably running 3 to 5 years. So strategic planning. So here's what I mentioned before. So you may have, as I said, a safety vision. Typically, what will be your 3 lead strategies that will lead you towards that over the next 5 to 10 years? You'll have probably a dozen enabling or what we call support strategies that will have to be put in place to achieve those 3 lead strategies. And sitting beneath that, you might have something like 24 projects underway. So one of those projects might be, we're going to do safety leadership training for all the supervisors, so they actually know what our goals are, what our vision is, and that they'll know what to do in relation to either manual handling or the amount of training we've got to do. So a strategic plan gives life to your safety vision. So both these have to work together. And so to finish off on strategic planning, key principles, or maybe some points rather than principles for you. If you have got the same plan as previous years, you're going to achieve similar results. This is a fundamental scientific principle. And so many people say, oh, we want to achieve more next year. And they show me their safety plan. It's the same one. It's the same one they've been done the year before and the year before that. Well, that's illogical to have the same plan and expect you're going to achieve dramatically improved performance. You're not going to. That's why you need a strategic plan to get a step jump in performance. And also when you're dealing with your exec team, just remember that safety is merely a subset of the business strategy, the overall business strategy. So maybe if you don't know right now in your role what your business corporate strategy is, what's their strategy for the next 3 to 5 years, and what's their 10-year vision, your safety program should be helping to support them to deliver that. So it's a subset. Safety is a subset of the overall corporate business plan. And strategic plans require decisions. And I can tell you in big organizations, this is why any change is uncomfortable and resisted, because a business will sometimes shift focus to somewhere else. And so if you're in a department that's not going to get that focus moving forward, so if you're in a university and the university decides as part of their strategic plan that they're not going to train teachers in the future, what they're going to do is train more engineers. So they're going to move money from the teaching department to the engineering department. If you're in the teaching department, you are going to hate that strategy. You are not going to like it, and you're going to fight it and resist it. So all I share with people is sometimes, probably not so much in safety, because I don't think we drop as much off. We don't shift all the money into one box and forget everywhere else. But strategic planning will require possibly shifting some focus. And if your total focus has been on, oh, we have golden circles, we have safety circles, and this is what drives our safety program. And if the strategic plan says, no, we're going to be doing something else or do it differently or better, we may shift focus and resource away from that. And people will be uncomfortable with that if they either were happy with it or liked it. And the final tip on strategic planning is that you people out there, if you're safety managers, you can't do this on your own in your own office. You cannot write a strategic safety plan for yourself in your own office and then say that's the plan for the business. It won't work. It will not be accepted. So typically you'll have a workshop. Now, this might be a 1-day workshop. It might be a 2-day workshop. Don't know how big your organisation is. You're going to involve your key stakeholders, including your doubters. So if you've got people that actually doubt what you're planning to do, you know this, draw them into the tent, bring them in and thrash it out. So what you're going to do is typically a workshop that will actually work out what your vision is, your strategy with its supporting strategies and roles, and KPIs. So there we go on strategic planning. So with that, I'll just hand over to Andrea to tell us about some new dangerous goods regs, Andrea.
Thanks, Gary. Now, we did mention this new regulations last month, but I did just want to put a reminder that these the updated regulations commence on the 26th of November. There's only a couple of real changes from previous, because most of the changes were actually incorporated in amendments put into the regulations last year. So the key changes is, one's on the screen. Previous regulations had a provision to allow old placards that were compliant to remain displayed. So the 50mm diamonds were previously allowed. You could keep those if you already had them in place and they were in good condition. That provision's now been removed. So if your site has dangerous goods and you've got building placards with the small 50mm diamonds on them, you now need to replace them for the correct size 100mm diamonds. Another new requirement is the requirement for impact protection around dangerous goods. So if you have tanks, pipework, or other plant with dangerous goods in there, you specifically require impact protection. So to prevent vehicles, the regulations also says ships or boats from crashing into your dangerous goods store. So that's something to check on. If you don't have it in place, it's now a specific requirement under the regulations.
Terrific,
The
Andrea.
other amendments, I did just want to touch on your notification to WorkSafe is required every 2 years now, not 5, and you have to display the acknowledgement from WorkSafe. And I also did want to just remind people, because I come across this one at least once a year, not everyone is aware that if your site exceeds what they call manifest quantity, not only do you have to notify WorkSafe, you also need a good emergency plan consulted with the fire brigade. So thanks for that.
Fantastic, Andrea. So your point about your signage and the size of the diamonds, this would fit in with most competent businesses do an annual safety sign survey. So presumably, Andrea, they could incorporate some guidance on the DG signage at every site.
I would recommend so,
Yeah.
because if your signs are faded and you can no longer read them, obviously they don't comply anymore either. So, especially you might notice those HazChem, the red ink on the signs, it actually fades a lot quicker than the other colors. So pay attention to those and just look for, if any of your signage is supposed to be red, make sure it still is red and visible and clear.
Terrific. Thanks for that, Andrea.
Thank you.
So I'll just return at the start of the session today. I said, that we had a few questions lately, and I thought I'd just share them with you because I think they're the sort of questions that you and I hear occasionally and think, gee, I wonder what the answer is to that. So let's have a look. Can you do your 10-year major inspection and service of major plant, which is typically cranes, hoists, forklifts, etc.? The manufacturers specify a 10-year design life. So both the manufacturer and under the Australian standards covered by most of those items of large items of plant, they state that there's a 10-year major inspection and service. And so somebody said, oh, we're going to buy a second-hand piece of plant. It might be only 8 years into its 10-year service life. Can we do the 10-year inspection and service at 8 years or 7 years or even 5 years? And the answer is yes. You can always do a service and inspection early, but your next 10 years will come from the date of the last inspection and service. You won't get the advantage. So it's like on a car, you can service your car early. So instead of 10,000 kilometres, you can service it at 5, but the next service will come up at another 10,000 k out, not 15. You can't then average them out. So yes, you can do it early, but your next major one will come 10 years from that date. The other question we got was, a company asked, do we have to make our staff isolate and lock out and tag out machinery if they see unsafe machinery, something's broken, unsafe? And the answer is no. Not everyone is competent and trained to know how to correctly isolate a piece of equipment, but everyone can turn it off and everyone can tag it out or maybe put some tape around it so nobody will use it or go near it. But in many businesses, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry, only the maintenance team are authorised to formally isolate and lock out and tag machinery. And the reason for that is there's been, over the history of many years, cases where people without adequate training and knowledge thought they'd isolated equipment correctly and they had not, and that caused serious injury or damage. So it's okay to just, for the vast majority of your staff, to simply say, turn it off, don't use it, tag it out, put signage on it, put danger tape around it, and specialised maintenance or service people might be the ones that are authorised to formally disconnect the power or isolate and lock it out. The other one was I had an inquiry about a forklift service provider told a firm that they have to retrospectively install hydraulic control locks on their forklifts, so that when a forklift pedestrian cage is raised on the forklift can't move horizontally, which of course is a good standard practice. So when people are up in a forklift cage, the forklift is not allowed to move horizontally. It's only allowed to go up and down vertically with people in it. So that's fine. It's in the Australian standard. It mentions the hydraulic controls, but Australian standards are not a legal requirement. Those requirements have been in the standards for many years. So if a service provider is now telling you you must install these, they are incorrect. And what they're looking for is more money to actually for you to pay them to install these control locks. Remember, a lot of sites may not use a forklift cage from 1 year to the next. They might use it once a year. And there are other ways to control horizontal movement than hydraulic control locks on a forklift. So don't let anyone trick you into thinking you legally must have to do this or it's in breach. It may be a good thing to do, specified in the standard, but not a legal requirement. You have alternatives. And you've already got controls where if anyone approaches a forklift driver on a forklift, they stop the forklift and they do not move until pedestrians move out of the way. Now, there's no formal controls on a forklift to do that. We're relying on the driver, and we can rely on the driver for pedestrian cages as well. And so the final question was posed to me. We see on a lot of big factories and facilities, vertical ladders leading up onto the roof, or even within a factory up to elevated platforms. Do we have to lock access to vertical ladders or fixed ladders, etc.? And the answer is no. There is no legal requirement to do this. However, many businesses lock particularly external vertical ladders onto roofs to stop burglars getting onto roofs, and maybe to stop contractors who enthusiastically get to your site but go up onto the roof before they've signed in or had a site induction. So it may be an appropriate thing to do, but I just want to make the point, there is no legal requirement to do so. And you need to consider your circumstances. Is there a lot of people there, particularly the public? I would be more tempted to lock access. If there are untrained, particularly in public there, that could access this area, I would want to control access. Inside a factory, often it's your own team, generally well trained, and therefore any visitors there are generally supervised. You'd probably have a low need to lock access to elevated platforms, etc. So that's the lot from me, Jessica. At the moment, I'll hand back to Jessica.
Thank you, Gary and Andrea, for those updates. I'd just like to remind people today is Remembrance Day. So just keep in mind and show your support to the veterans community. Thank you for showing up today, for supporting us. Our next webinar will be on Friday, the 9th of December. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.